for pardons because the president has to be there. And the president, when these pardons were signed, was on vacation. So isn't that interesting? I think that's unbelievably interesting. And so Trump is going to do something about that, maybe. Trump says he's not going to change his mind on aluminum, steel, or car tariffs. What does the car tariff thing mean, do you think? Is he joking again? Haha, that Trump guy is super funny. And so we'll see. He seems very firm on the April 2nd timeline on all of that because April 1st, he thinks it would be something like April Fools, but he says he's not going to do that. And unfortunately for Canadians, we get April Fools because we have to wait until April 1st for an immediate drop in our carbon tax, which happened the other day with Carney signing that fake piece of paper that means nothing. And he told us immediately, but I guess he doesn't know what immediately means and nobody bothered to tell him. The RCMP are getting their uniforms made in Hong Kong, and that's not a joke. That's just straight facts. Weird, right? Isn't that crazy? And Carney jets off to Europe, ignoring the biggest threat in 100 years. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, is it the biggest threat in 100 years? I don't know about that. Mark Carney's been saying that for the last little while. And again, I don't think that that's really accurate. If his response to that threat is, now that I've got power, I'm not going to call that guy and broker any kind of conversation or anything like that. No. I'm not going to recall Parliament or anything like that. I'm not going to deal with the Green Slush Fund documents or the ArriveCan documents and all of the rest of the associated scandals there. No, I'm going to deal with flying off to Europe and strengthening our Canadian presence in the Arctic. What? It doesn't make any rational sense. So Mark Carney is bonkers, making sure that he stops by top of the morning too as well. I forgot today is St. Patrick's Day and I tried to, so I hope you are dressed in green. I'm dressed, I got my green on. And I was trying to do my intro with a St. Patrick's Day song, but they're all so sad. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't start the show like this. I'm going to cry. So happy St. Patrick's Day. I hope it's a happy one. I hope we actually have like some St. Patrick's Day ceremonies and stuff this year. Didn't Donald Trump say this year is supposed to be a really, really good year? He's going to Irish Heritage Month or something like that. So it's supposed to be a big one. Mark Carney, before he flew off to England, made sure he made an appearance at the St. Patrick's Day parade in Montreal yesterday. This is Guillaume saying Mark Carney, the new unelected Prime Minister of Canada, was present in Montreal for the St. Patrick's Day parade. So they do this on the Sunday before. Can't they do the St. Patrick's Day parade on St. Patrick's Day? Isn't that weird? Is that weird for anybody else? I mean, I guess you could do it on the Sunday and have like lots of attendance and stuff, but it makes sense, I suppose. But anyway, here's Food Professor. So before Mark Carney flew off, he made sure to make an appearance at St. Patrick's Day in Montreal. Food Professor says Mark Carney became Prime Minister designate 7 days ago and officially took office as Prime Minister 2 days ago. Still no call from President Trump. Just saying, elbows up. So are these your priorities? A St. Patrick's Day parade? Really? Seriously? Like this is what we're going to do? Because I think people are, looking for a bit more substance considering what the competition is. And if the competition is Donald Trump, he's doing a lot every single day. And that makes a difference. It matters, right? Here's Brian Mulroney of all people calling out Kim, and Kim's talking about how what Mark Carney's doing is right and he's going to Europe to broker these deals with reliable partners, which is kind of nonsense. And Ben Mulroney comes out with this. Mark Carney assessed that our issues with the United States constitute an existential threat. He claimed that he was the man to meet this moment. The moment is here. Go meet it. When your house is on fire, your priority shouldn't be buying French pastries for breakfast. So Mark Carney is in France, going to be in England later on today, and then Nunavut tomorrow. Here is gov.exe is corrupt, says Carney is currently in a trade war with China and the United States, and Mark Carney's first official trip as Prime Minister is to France, the same Mark Carney who wants to transform Canada into a net zero economy. I'm so sick of these climate hypocrites. So yeah, I mean, super interesting, right? All of these hypocritical behaviors, all of these politicians who pretend they know best, all of these people saying, I know how to meet the moment. And when the moment comes, they run off to Europe, right? So it's super weird. Marty up north is sharing this. This, I guess, is the itinerary officially posted by the Prime Minister. And it says the Prime Minister and Canada's new government are focused on what matters most right now, creating more high-paying jobs, building new trade relationships with reliable partners, and making Canada more secure. To that end, the Prime Minister announced today that he will travel to Paris, France, London, United Kingdom, Iqaluit, Nunavut from March 16th to 18th, 2025. So 3 destinations, Paris, England, and Nunavut. for Canada's security and sovereignty, right? To reaffirm Canada's Arctic security and sovereignty. You mean the Arctic region that the United States defends? Right, that one. Okay, just making sure we're on the same page here. In Paris, Prime Minister Carney will meet with, that sounds weird, doesn't it? We'll meet with the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, with the Canada-European Union Compensation Economic and Trade Agreement as the foundation. The leaders will focus on their shared commitment to build stronger economic, commercial, and defense ties. Prime Minister Carney will also emphasize Canada's work to unleash the innovative and economic potential of artificial intelligence safely and responsibly. In London, Prime Minister Carney will meet with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer. Their discussions will focus on strengthening transatlantic security, growing the AI sector, and the strong commercial relationship between Canada and the United Kingdom. The Prime Minister will explore ways to deepen bilateral trade through Canada-United Kingdom Trade Continuity Agreement and the Comprehensive Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnerships. I bet you he's not offering any milk, okay? If he is, he's only offering it to piss Donald Trump off. Prime Minister Carney will also have an audience with His Majesty King Charles III. The Prime Minister will then travel to Ilquat, Nunavut on March 18 to reassert Canada's sovereignty in the Arctic. He will meet with the members of the Ilquat Patrol of 1 Canadian Patrol Rangers Group, a group critical to Arctic stability and security. Prime Minister Carney will also meet with the Premier of Nunavut, PJ Akigok, to learn more about the evolving needs and priorities of Arctic and northern communities. He will reaffirm the new government's support for growing a stronger economy across the north, reinforcing its sovereignty and security, and emphasizing our continued commitment to advancing reconciliation with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis throughout the country. So I didn't see fixing the trade issues with Donald Trump on that list at all, right? Like, that's not a top priority. Here's Ben Mulroney again, and he's responding to Anita Anand. Anita Anand is lamenting to Rosemary Barton that the Conservatives don't have a plan, and really the Liberals are the only ones with a plan. Ben Mulroney says, Miss Anand, I say this with respect, as I know you to be a respectful person, but if the biggest threat facing Canada is American tariffs, and if your newly elected leader and our Prime Minister believes that he is the only person who can defend Canada against Donald Trump, that he shouldn't be going to Europe. He shouldn't be going to Europe. He should be down in Washington. Also, Axe the Tax was a slogan until it became a weapon, which then became your policy and is now touted as some sort of accomplishment. The Conservatives would be stupid to put anything else in the window that your party could appropriate. So maybe not. But the main question is, you as a party, and Mr. Carney specifically, but the rest of the Liberals went along with it, said Mr. Trump is the biggest threat and we need to deal with these tariffs. And instead of actually doing any of that, have gone off to Europe. This is not dealing with the problem head on. And they're all trying to sanitize. This is just 40 seconds of Anita Anand attacking Pierre Poilievre, saying he's a sloganizing and doesn't have a plan, et cetera, et cetera. And I can't help but feel that they're stealing my content to attack the Conservatives and other, right-wing pundits, et cetera, et cetera. But they're lazy. And this is one of those videos that feels like it's forever. So you can go watch it on your own time if you're interested. I watched it once already. It was boring. Alberta Radio says, these people are an organized crime syndicate. This is a picture of the cabinet under Carney. Okay, so Mark Carney's new government, and there you go. Yeah, Alberta Radio, I think, is accurate in his description. Scam rackets on Canadians, kill Canadians, control and brainwashing, complete subversion of the Canadian people. Yeah, at this point, it's something like... it feels like we're under occupation. It feels like the Canadian government is not actually there to help us, but it's there to take our money and funnel that money to Ukraine for some reason, which doesn't feel honest. Joe Warmington is talking to Mark Carney, and he's responding. Mark Carney is saying, on my call with President von der Leyen, we spoke about the Rearm Europe plan and Canada's role in strengthening defense at home and abroad. The Rearm Europe plan? Do we have a Rearm Canada plan? In the face of global threats, Canada is meeting this moment. No, you're not. No, we're not. Securing new military equipment and working with allies to keep us all safe. You want a war with the United States? Seriously? Joe Warmington says you don't have normal political legitimacy to lead Canada during a prorogued parliament in general, but especially when it comes to these floated moves towards war in Europe, Russia, Ukraine, or on Canadian soil. You are unelected to a seat in the House of Commons, and your party has not formally made a deal with an opposition party to avoid being defeated in a confidence or non-confidence vote, which can't happen with a risen legislature. So if the Parliament remains prorogued, no vote can happen and fail, right? So they're protecting themselves by not calling the House of Commons. You should reconvene Parliament and test how the elected members feel and or go to an election now to allow Canadians a say in what moves the country makes next. You don't have a majority government or any mandate to move forward to govern as if you do. In a democracy, decisions are to be debated and voted on in Parliament, and when it's suspended, there is no democracy. As a result, any major decisions should involve the opposition parties. It's concerning now that a leader was chosen to replace elected PM Justin Trudeau, the prorogation is still in place. This is peculiar for Canada and raises questions when there is no certain election date and no checks and balances within an elected hall of democracy. It's inappropriate to operate it as if it's business as usual when there is no functioning parliament. If decisions are not being scrutinized in parliament, it's a type of government hasn't been seen before in peacetime. I don't disagree, right? And so Mark Carney's not listening to rational things. He's rubbing elbows with the elites in Europe, right? So weird. Resist CBDC says your savings will soon be much easier to confiscate when it's stored as a central bank digital currency. You're not allowed to complain. Coming to the EU this October 2025. So Resist CBDC says EU Commission will unveil the Savings and Investment Union, will turn private savings into much needed investment. And there's more connections with Ursula von der Leyen, but Carney's chatting with her about the Rearm Europe plan. And I think this kind of maps like all of these plans are operational with Mark Carney in place, right? Like Mark Carney, the piece got moved, and now he operates those squares, and now central bank digital currency is in play, or on the way. Not exactly happening in real time, but on the way, and it's not great, right? CP24 says, quotes Carney, soft power, Trump doesn't understand, former foreign minister on Carney's foreign trip. I think Trump gets it. It's not really difficult. There's nobody's hiding their intentions here. Anne says Carney has no mandate. Meanwhile, mainstream media hides Carney is under investigation in the United States. Carney is in no position to negotiate a trade war. So Carney is after our CPP. He's under investigation in the United States for financial blackmail, attempts to replace board members for cartel-friendly people. The allegations are so severe, BlackRock, 6 American banks, and several Canadian banks have distanced themselves from Carney and Brookfield. So it's interesting. And again, this is a little bit beyond the podcast today. And I don't know, I've heard of this. He was deposed in late 24, October 24, about something around this, but I can't go into depth on this because it'll it'll take me a long time to explain the whole thing. Like I did a Mark Norman kind of in-depth piece to figure out exactly what was going on there. So this is kind of like that. There's a big thing. It's like a big cavity because Mark Carney's teeth are terrible. It's like a big cavity, and maybe you can't see how deep and terrible it is on the surface, but you know that if you put a nibs in there, it's going to hurt. Okay. So like we are in a situation where there are things happening behind the scenes and not so behind the scenes that put Carney in a situation where he's way less strong than he's presenting, I think. And so we're going to have to wait and see. Is this going to come into play? Maybe I'm going to have to do like an episode dedicated to figuring out exactly what these allegations are and how they stack up. Maybe somebody else will do it and I can just refer you to it. Maybe that'll be what happens too. But this is in depth, and I think it might rear its ugly head for Carney, but we'll see. We'll see. Here is Holly Doan. I don't understand why Blacklock's reporter is covering for Carney. Why not report this accurately? Holly Doan says, Prime Minister Carney signals an imminent election call with gas price cut of 18 cents per liter. Reversal of signature climate plan eliminates consumer carbon tax effective April 1st because it created economic distortions. Why not report on the fact that he said immediately and then it's not immediate at all? It's 2 weeks from now. Like, why the prep time? What do we need to do? Fire the 500 people administering the carbon tax? They're apparently going to send out the carbon tax check, so they're just making sure they have enough money in the coffers to pay for it? I have absolutely no idea, but it seems ridiculous to say you're going to do something immediately and not do that thing immediately, right? Immediately means right now. Sheila Gunn Reed says, Gilmore thought Antifa is cut from the same cloth as our grandpas who fought the Nazis. Now he's Carney's defense and security advisor. This is as radical a choice as any Trudeau ever made. So I'm just showing you that Carney is same It's the same thing, really. We're getting the same kind of radical government. And somebody made a really good point in the comments yesterday that with Carney's child being at a place that's LGBTQ friendly, and it seems like they're using they them pronouns, that's a hard signal that Carney's on board with this whole ideology, which again, not surprising, but if you were wondering, there's signals that that's what he believes. And I said yesterday, like, it's really damaging to families. So is that surprising? Here's Brian Lilly. He says, Bob Fife on how Mark Carney doesn't like to answer tough questions, especially about his finances and conflict of interest. Fife notes how Carney gets testy with journalists who ask him questions he doesn't like. Yeah, we saw that with Rosemary Barton, and they did a hard cut, and I couldn't find where he gets flustered. But he got flustered, like super flustered. So flustered, I guess, that they wanted to start over and they cut it. So, you got to cut that, Rosie. And if you don't, I'm going to yell at you again like I did during the cutscene. Okay, here's just a little bit of back and forth. This is from May 16, so yesterday.
He doesn't tell us just how much he's worth.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really the question here. Are you worth $10 million, $20 million, $50 million? We have no idea. Who is the person who's running the blind trust? Is it your brother? Is it, if you're having an independent person who's supposed to take care of the blind trust, that person should be independent and far removed from Mr. Carney's assets. We don't know who that is. Is he requiring to sell all the stocks, which apparently you're supposed to, but has he sold all the stocks and his investments in anything that may put him in a conflict with the government? Those are things that he needs to answer to Canadians, and he doesn't want to answer those questions. And you said he was a little testy. He does not like tough questions from journalists. He's used to a more compliant financial press when he was a central banker, and they're very much respectful of them. Well, we're political reporters. We have an obligation to ask the tough questions, and that's something we're going to have to watch for during the campaign. Is when he gets angry or annoyed or arrogant at journalists for pressing him on issues that he doesn't want to answer.
Yeah, we've already seen it. And so I'm interested to see if he cracks, and if he cracks publicly, and if he has some kind of way to explain it away. Lauren says, I'm so old I remember in the 2000 election, Joe Clark calling Paul Martin's blind trust a Venetian blind when details were not forthcoming. And I think the idea of a Venetian blind is hilarious, right? Like a blind trust where you can, turn that little thing and you can see the eyes peeking through, right? He definitely knows. Bob Mackin says Mark Carney's campaign director, Braden Cayley, becomes PMO deputy chief of staff. Here is Cayley between Justin Trudeau and Gregor Robertson, the ex-Vancouver mayor who praised China and criticized the West in 2010, 3 years before Trudeau. So interesting, right? Interesting. All the same players are just in kind of different positions. So meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Alex says, she's responding to Dr. Jacobs. When asked about oil and gas investments, Carney responds that companies must have business plans that are consistent with transition to net zero. Does this sound like someone who's going to build pipelines and develop Canada's oil and gas industry? And so Alex says this is why Mark Carney has yet to say the words gas, oil, or pipelines. Well, if the biggest deal is the United States and tariffs, and the second biggest deal is we need to, pivot away from the United States as our only customer and build pipelines, of course, the only thing that he would have to do to get started on that is fly to Europe. Building east-west Canadian pipelines starts in France, don't you know? Right? Like, what? So obviously he's not serious about this. He just said it to get elected. So he's a liar, but he's already a proven liar. We've already talked about that. And he onboarded Marco Mendicino, who also is allergic to the truth, right? So he just doesn't say the truth, because if he does, his throat closes up and he has hives and stuff. It's really a sight to see. Lee says, if only the Canadian Prime Minister was interested in a rearm Canada plan. So here's another one of Ursula von der Leyen and Mark Carney talking about rearm Europe. But, Canada can just keep flying in invaders. It's fine. No problems. Nothing to see here. They're very politically organized, we've noticed. Yes. Daisy says, let's move on just a little bit, but not really. This is all kind of in the same zone, in the same vein. He's responding to Mark Carney talking with President von der Leyen about the But this time, this is about Canada-EU trade. Canada and Europe are strong, reliable partners in a shifting global economy that matters more than ever. We're ready to secure new transatlantic business opportunities together. This is a terrible idea, right? This is a terrible idea. And Dacey says, have you had a conversation with the world's two largest economies and our two largest trading partners, the United States and China? So have you done anything at all to talk about anything that's happening? Have you heard of the canola oil? Somebody was saying canola oil is bad for you. It is seed oil and it's bad for you. And it's good that China's not going to, like, it's good that the industry is imploding. And maybe so. Maybe the seed oils are not good for people, but you can't take $200 billion industry and just turn it off, because that's going to do damage. If you want to replace it with beef tallow, right? Like canning, we're changing from the seed oils to beef tallow, and bango bongo, right? Like now you've got a soup, right? Now you've got people who didn't lose their jobs, and the oils that they're using or the cooking material that they're using is healthy for you. So maybe that would be better. But the job loss is kind of separate from the product itself, and the issue is China is trying to punish Canada for Canada's stupid position on EVs to protect a market that doesn't have any jobs. They're willing to sacrifice a huge market of people who are working, right? So it doesn't make a lot of sense unless you realize it's ideologically driven, right? And so Mark Carney's not going to fix these trade issues with the United States or with China, because he can't. He's kind of stuck, and he always was. Here is same way Trudeau is, right? They're listening to their bosses who want Canada aligned with who we are aligned with right now. White Rabbit Warrior says, absolutely not. There's no way that number is even close to accurate. So Eurasive is reporting Canada to be EU's 28th member. Nearly half of Canadians say yes. So are we going to replace the United States trade with EU trade? Do you think that's... If you got to live anywhere, would you rather to be able to live anywhere in the EU, England excluded, or would you rather be able to live anywhere in the United States? I think the United States makes a lot more sense. People are not happy about this idea. And I mean, obviously this isn't true. I don't think this is a smart idea, right? Like, and they were trying to do this anyway with CANZUK, and include the Australia and New Zealand in the whole populations can move back and forth. And this is when the UK was part of Brexit, and everybody was like, kumbaya, this is wonderful. And I thought, there are inherent problems with this. And we've seen those problems with the United Kingdom. Anyway, Mark Carney talking about trade, and Richard says, he's fooling you. The shift from the United States to Europe is a pipe dream. Like with most business relationships, proximity matters. It really does matter, right? Like, so the US exports from Canada 77%, and imports from the United States 50%, 50.75%, okay? And then China's 13.28%. Our exports to China are fourth on the chart there, and it's still only 3.79%. Like, we don't have any use case. It's not like another group, another country, another entity like the Eurozone is even 50% of what the United States sends us, right, or takes from us. So we want to ramp up and replace all of that with just the EU area. Like, I think it's a pipe dream. I don't think it's rational. It doesn't make any sense to me. And clearly people looking at the numbers are saying that's not possible. Like, how long did it take to get to 4.1% in the Euro area? And how long, like, is it regulations that it's so small, or is it the ocean that makes the difference? Like, what's the driving limiter here? Or what's the bottleneck? And I like driving limiter better. What's the bottleneck? So if we can understand the bottleneck, we can understand the impediment to growing this. If it's policy, then okay, change the policy and let's unleash it. And like, why not have a conversation about keeping as much of the US stuff as we can? Because sending more is better, right? But if it's policy, fine. But if it's another bottleneck, something that we don't have control of, we should know about that before we make a plan to alienate our biggest trading partner. Terry says Mark Carney is completely delusional if he believes the EU can replace the USA as a trading partner. The European culture is different than ours, and our tastes are more closely aligned with Americans. Yeah, I think so. Sheldon says despite the fact that 5 countries in Europe, Germany, Greece, Ukraine, Poland, and Latvia, wanted Alberta LNG, and Trudeau shut them down because of no business case, shipping is too expensive, we're now to believe that Mark Carney can replace our 75% of our exports into the United States by shipping to Europe because carbon tax. Am I getting this right? Is anybody buying this? The Washington Times says new Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney seeks alliance in Europe as he deals with Trump. So yes, help me fight Trump. Those evil Americans are ridiculously outpacing our GDP. So our per person GDP is tanking, and that's no surprise because we're importing a huge replacement population. So when you import a whole bunch of people, your GDP gets watered down and your GDP per person goes into the toilet. We're at 0.5%, whereas the United States is at 20%, right? Germany's at 4.7% because they're also importing people. Finland at 6.7%, Norway at 7.4%, jumping up a little bit, Spain at 17%. So their growth based on GDP per capita in less than 10 years. Per capita is just per person. Okay, that's it, per person growth. And Canada is at 0.5. Why? Why is Canada at 0.5%? Because all the people we're importing don't work. They don't work. They are leeching off the government payments, things like that. Here's the proof that they don't work. Recent population boom has not come with productivity gains. So index 2019 Q4, when you look at these divergent lines, real GDP per worker has stayed flat or decreased, and the population has increased. So as people come here, our productivities kind of just remained the same where it was in 2015. And so it gets watered down and we're not able to grow because of the carbon tax. All of this, I mean, a lot of this is policy driven. We could fix it, but this is why our GDP per capita is in the toilet. This is policy based, okay? The immigration policy, the carbon tax. The immigration policy is the increasing blue line. The carbon tax is the decreasing dark blue line. Why make them both blue? Anyway, it's interesting to me, and they can fix this. We could fix this, but they're not going to fix this because they like what's going on. And that's scary. That's crazy talk. Here's Brian Lilly talking about tariffs. And what's funny is he's trying to dismiss the idea that the United States subsidizes Canada by hand waving away defense. How much would defense be if we had to pay for it ourselves, right? It's kind of like saying, listen, Dad, I know you pay for the house, okay? But I pay rent. So like, I don't know, man. The whole thing is kind of ridiculous. We don't have a say in what Donald Trump does. And if he pulls the subsidies that he's talking about, if we don't pay the amount that he's asking for in order to cover defense, then I think there's going to be problems. And so does he have a point? Yeah. Like if materially he's able to pull out $200 billion from our economy or whatever he's saying a year, and like 75% of our exports go to the United States. And he says, we don't need your cars. We don't need your energy. We don't need any of that. We've got more energy than we could use. We got more trees than we could use. We want the cars to be made in the United States. We don't need any of this. If that's all true, which it seems to be, then he holds all the cards. And so we're being stupid. Like we need to respond to the fact that he holds all the cards here. Here's Trump. Brian Lilly's saying, except for that defense thing, he's lying. But I don't think so. And I don't hear Doug Ford saying, I'm going to turn off the electricity. Here we go.
Mr. President, a representative of Canada, the finance minister are in town and will meet members of your administration during the day. Any chances that you will ban on the tariffs on aluminum and the ones that are planned for April 2nd?
No.
You are not going to change your
No,
mind?
not. Look, we've been ripped off for years, and we're not going to be ripped off anymore. No, I'm not going to bend at all. Aluminum or steel or cars, we're not going to bend. We've been ripped off as a country for many, many years. We've been subjected to costs that we shouldn't be subjected to. In the case of Canada, we're spending $200 billion a year to subsidize Canada.
Lots of money. And so
Mr. President,
there you go. So if he turns that off, very plausible that Canada runs into problems. I've also been seeing this reported, and it was pointed out to me correctly, that if you cross and don't stay for 24 hours, then you don't have any exemptions. You have to pay full taxes on everything that you bring back. Like, that's pretty normal. Apparently that hasn't been happening for people who do grocery shopping. They just get waved through. So people are now shocked that the border guards are actually charging them tax that they should have maybe been charging all the time, right? But here's the food professor sharing this. A Montreal reporter crossed into New York State for the same day grocery shopping trip on a total bill of $478. That's American. A Canadian Customs imposed a 25% tariff, adding $120 to the cost, with GST and QST 15% added. The final tally reached $617. Going to the U.S. for groceries offers more choices, but it's rarely cheaper. More choices? How does it offer more choices? Like $2 for milk. That's a lot of savings on milk. But yeah, if you go and you spend and you're buying like Bounty, I mean, I'm sure that there's a more economical way to do that. Also, you get exemptions as you're away from the country. You get a certain amount of money that you get to bring in after 3 days. And then if you're there for a week, you can bring in more money. Like there's more money that you're able to bring back. So with all of the exemptions, now I'm not saying that they're not doing the 25% tariff. You should be aware of that. But I think that it's kind of stacked, like they're trying to stack the deck to make it sound as bad as possible. And I don't know, it feels disingenuous to me. We've got lots more coming, but I've got to turn off the stream. So we're going to be talking about our grab bag of governance and the election stuff. Pierre Poilievre saying that Canada is the richest nation on earth. But unfortunately, we're poor only because we choose to be. So we're going to be talking about all of that and USA and Ukraine and more. But we'll catch you tomorrow, everybody on the stream. Thanks for watching. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful